The Hanging Church. Its name. It is known as the Hanging Church or Suspended because it is built on the eastern and western towers of Roman fortress, Babylon Fortress. The top of the Roman fortress was covered with palm trees, wood, and layers of stone to be the ground of the church. European travellers called it a staircase church because it is approached by 29 steps. Medieval Western pilgrim referred to the church as the Church of the Column. Texts in Arabic describe it as the Church of Our Lady Mary, the staircase church, the Roman fortress. This Roman fortress was built as part of the Roman defences for the city of Memphis. The original fortress was known to be built during the time of Roman Emperor Augustus, but the new fortress was built during the time of Roman Emperor Trajan. The information was proved to be non-true, and most probably it dates to the 3rd century. Its name was derived from the ancient Egyptian name Pa-Hapi-Niwn, which means the Nile House of Heliopolis. During the Roman period, it was known as Babylon Fortress. The Arabs called it Qasr el-Shamar, which means the place of candles. Its location. It's located at the south of Cairo, at area called Qasr el-Shama, at Old Cairo. Its history. It dates back to the end of the 8th century and beginning of the 9th century. It was built during the time of Patriarch Isaac, and then rebuilt during the time of Patriarch of Abraham. The earliest mention of this church was a statement in the biography of Joseph, when the governor of Egypt demolished the upper part of the church until it reaches to the columns. The church was plundered, and precious chalice was buried under the altar. Once again, it was plundered under Al-Ashraf Khalil, 1290 to 1293. Also, Al-Makrizi and Abu el-Barakat ibn Kabar recorded the church closed about the 14th century and reopened during 1301, the intervention of the Emperor of Byzantium, and during the 19th century, the Committee for the Conservation of the Monuments of Arab Arts has been carrying out repairs and various works in this church. It was restored many times during the 10th, 13th, 17th, and 19th centuries. The last restoration took place by the Egyptians and Russians. It happened in 2014. Some historians believe that this church was Roman temple and converted into Roman church. Finally, it became Coptic church. This was proved through the discovery of scenes on the western side of the right aisle in front of the altar of St. Thecla, which contained pagan Roman gods. It was covered by layers of plaster in 1984 during the restoration. The oldest part of the church may be the sanctuary of St. Thecla, baptistry, and church of St. Mark. According to Coptic traditions, the Holy Family as well as Saints Mark and Peter visited the site, and Peter sent his epistle from here. According to some Arab historians of the 14th century, a mosque is erected under the church. Arab legend attributes it to Belsa, Balthazar, son of Nebuchadnezzar, and a Coptic woman. There was a library containing manuscripts of theological, liturgical, and hagiographical order. Now it is represented in the Coptic Museum. Function. This church was a place of the election from the Patriarch Christodulus, 1047 to 1077, consecration, enthronement of Patriarchs of Alexandria. This lasted down to the Patriarch John VIII, 1300 to 1320. Also, it was the patriarchal residence from the time of Michael IV, 1092 to 1102, and synods were held there. Importance of the church. It became the seat of the Patriarch after moving it from Alexandria to El-Fusst from the 7th century to the 13th century. The Holy Virgin Mary appeared in this church. It appeared to Anba Abraham's 62nd Patriarch in a vision, when governor of Egypt El-Imam El-Muiz asked him to move Mokatam Hill from his place to prove the words of Bible. He spent 3 days in prayer and fasting. Virgin Mary appeared to him to tell him what to do. According to this story, An earthquake happened and the Mokattam Hill moved. The Caliph awarded him by allowing him to restore the Hanging Church and Abu Safin Church. 7 patriarchs were buried there from the 11th to 15th centuries. It has 110 icons. The oldest one dates to the 8th century, while most of them dated back to the 18th century. These were painted during the time of Nakla el-Barati Bey. There is a storeroom filled of holy chrism up till now. Design of the church. This church is dedicated to Virgin Mary and Saint Damiana. It is built in basilica style. It measures about 23.5 meters long, 18.5 meters wide, 9.5 meters high. It was entered through gate on Mari Girgis Street. It is decorated with stalactites and the cross at the top of it. It has many mosaics, which represent Jesus the Christ and saints, one of them representing the entry of Holy Family to Egypt. We can see representation of Virgin Mary sitting on the back of donkey, which is the transportation at Palestine. We see Jesus the Christ sitting on the leg of Virgin Mary. We see Joseph in front of them. It has many palm trees which used during the Palm Sunday. There is a staircase which leads to 3 doors. When we enter from one of the doors, we have a corridor which has a group of Father Patriarchs' pictures. This corridor leads to an open court, which is used as resting place for the visitors. There is a fountain in the middle of this open court. We have 2 doors in front of this fountain, which leads to the nave of the church. There is imitation of an entrance in the middle. They are decorated with geometrical decoration and crosses. There is a door in the open court, which is used to be entrance of the church in previous era. The nave. The roof of the nave takes the shape of the Ark of Noah, sign of salvation. It is divided into 3 aisles by 2 rows of pillars. The middle aisle is the largest one. The church was modified, and the 3-aisled basilica became a church with 4 aisles during the 19th century. 3 columns in the middle and 8 in the side aisles. They used number 8 because it is number of people who ascend to the Ark of Noah. They used also number 3 because it is number of days that Jesus spent in the tomb. These pillars are made of marble except one, which is made of black basalt. The capitals of these columns are Corinthian. There is a painting of a woman on one of the columns. It dates back to the 4th century. This painting represents Virgin Mary when she appeared in a vision to Anba Abraham, or maybe a queen. The walls of the church are decorated with fine geometrical and floral decoration. The windows of the church are made of coloured glass and it has a cross in the middle. There is a glass panel in the floor of the church, from which we can see the towers of Roman fortress. We have also depiction of shell, which is sign of resurrection and rebirth rests on 2 pillars. It has steps which used by priests to ascend to tell the people speeches. At the end of the nave, there is a chorus. It is higher than the nave and used by priests. There are 2 lecterns, one to read the Holy Book in Coptic language and the other to read the Holy Book in Arabic. These lecterns are decorated with a cross in the middle. It is sign of soul, Father, Holy Spirit, or it represents the 12 disciples of the Jesus the Christ. We have also 2 alabaster light stands, which represent the Old Testament and New Testament. There is a staircase inside the church, which leads outside the church. It is used by the Christian during the persecution time. Altars. There are 7 altars inside the church. 3 altars inside the main aisle of the church. The altar of St. George in the northern side, the altar of Virgin Mary in the middle, and the altar of St. John the Baptist in the southern side. 3 altars in the church of St. Tekla, Hemanot el-Hapshi. The last one is the altar of St. Mark inside the little church of St. Mark. The sanctuaries. There are 3 sanctuaries at the end of the nave. The middle ID is dedicated to Virgin Mary, the one on the left side is dedicated to St. John the Baptist, and the other on the right side is dedicated to St. George. The sanctuaries are fronted by sanctuary screen. The sanctuary screen of Virgin Mary is made of wood and inlaid with ivory and ebony. It is decorated with cross inside circle, which is sign of eternity, and star patterns, which are similar to those found in mosques. There are 2 windows opening from outside to inside. There are 2 windows opening from outside to inside. This window referring to the story of Jesus the Christ and Tawadros, when he ordered him to go deep inside things. Iconostasis. At the top of each sanctuary there is iconostasis. It is made of wood and inlaid with ebony and ivory without any glue. The iconostasis of St. George altar is decorated with 17 icons representing his tortures. The iconostasis of Virgin Mary altar is decorated with 7 icons representing John the Christ in the middle. On his right, Virgin Mary, Archangel Gabriel, and St. Peter. On his left, St. John the Baptist, Archangel Michael, and St. Paul. The iconostasis of St. John the Baptist is decorated with 7 icons representing the life of St. John, Annunciation of the birth of St. John the Baptist, the visitation of Virgin Mary to Elizabeth, Mother of John Baptist, the birth of John Baptist, the preaching in the desert, the baptism of Christ by John the Baptist, the beheading of John Baptist, a Coptic tradition narrating events after the death of John Baptist, the sanctuary of Virgin Mary. There is a tribune behind the altar. It is made of marble. It consists of 3 straight and 3 curved steps beside the topmost bench. It is place where the clergy sit. The altar is surmounted by a canopy, which supported by 4 columns. There is a niche in the eastern wall of the sanctuary. The 3 sanctuaries were restored in 1884 AD, the relics of saints. There are a lot of relics of saints on both aisles of the church to commemorate them. These relics were discovered by priest Marcus Aziz Khalil and Mr. Hannah Assad. They used to anoint the relics with rose oil, then put it into group of circular shapes inside frame. The outer frame consists of hexangular shapes to looks like the honeybee cell, which is the words of God in Bible. This church has many relics, such as relic of St. George, relic of St. Damiana, relic of St. Tadros el-Shatpi, and etc. The icons. This church has many icons on both sides. The most beautiful and oldest one is the icon of Virgin Mary and the Christ sitting on the left leg of her, while John the Baptist is sitting beside her right leg. This icon is unique because when you look at her from any direction, you feel Virgin Mary looks at you. This icon is called as Coptic Mona Lisa. This icon dates back to the 8th century. There are other icons such as icon of nativity, icon of resurrection, icon of annunciation, icon of St. Mark, and etc. The little church. There is a door in the right aisle. It is made of wood and inlaid in ivory and ebony. This door leads to the oldest part of the church, which is the altar of St. Tekla Hemanot. St. Tekla is an Ethiopian saint who lived during the 13th century. The sanctuary screen dates back to the 13th century. There is fresco of the Christ flanked by apostles on the eastern wall. This fresco dates back to the 4th and 5th century. There is another fresco on the front wall, which represents Virgin Mary and 24 priests. After the restoration, they discovered fresco of nativity. There is a glass panel in the ground from which we can see the towers of Babylonian Fortress. There is also window from which we can see the fortress. There is a staircase leads to the upper church of St. Mark, which has the 7th altar. This church considered as one of the oldest part of the church.